Howdy folks, welcome back to Mingles with Jingles, the first episode of Mingles with Jingles in 2 weeks. There was obviously no Mingles with Jingles last week because I was in America. And bizarrely enough, despite the fact that in almost every video that I uploaded in the week prior to flying out to America, I made mention of the fact that I was going to be gone for a week, there were still people who didn't understand why there wasn't a video up every day while I was in America. And you know, it did get me thinking. If people are watching enough of my videos to notice when a day goes by without a video upload, but are paying so little attention to the videos that they're watching every day that they had no idea where I was or why there wasn't a video going up, I just, nope, I got nothing. I can't explain that one. Trolling or stupid? Let's be generous and say trolling. I mean, who sits around waiting all day for a video of mine to go up and then doesn't pay any attention to it while it's playing? It just boggles the mind. Welcome to the internet. But anyway, America had an amazing time doing things like this. And this. A little bit of this. But if we're going to be honest, it was it was mostly this and this. I've no idea how much weight I actually put on after a week of splurging at least twice a day at all of Ohio's best fast food joints. But let's just say when I weighed myself at the airport in Heathrow on my return, the speak your weight machine said, "One at a time, please." Totally worth it though. The trip to America was fantastic. And I know the British have a reputation for being very, very polite, but the Americans are just so nice. They really, really are. Just such a friendly, accommodating, generous people. Maybe that was because it was just me. Or maybe it was just because it was Ohio. Maybe not like that everywhere else in the USA. I don't know. But I went to Manhattan when I retired from the Navy. I treated myself to a visit to New York, and New York was just the same. And New York's got a reputation for being, rude, but it's just not like that. Maybe it's the British accent. I really don't know. Of course, a lot of people were anticipating my arrival. Obviously, I advertised the fact that I was going. And for anybody who followed me on Facebook, I was actually letting people know a couple of hours in advance where I was going to be on each day, because I know a lot of people in the Columbus and Dayton area who follow me on YouTube were keen to meet me, and I did meet a lot of people, and it was just amazing. And I said this to most of them, and it's absolutely true. I hope that I never get so popular that meeting people becomes a pain in the arse, because that was the high point of the trip. I mean, the food was fantastic. Flying in a helicopter gunship was fantastic. The US Army Air Force Museum was amazing. The Dayton Air Show was incredible, but the best part of it all was just meeting all of the people who travelled to Dayton or travelled to Columbus just to meet me, and showered me with gifts as well. The unbelievable generosity. In fact, I should probably thank you all here, and particular shout-outs go to Jeremy, who organised the whole trip. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gone to Dayton this year. So everybody who was hoping to meet me at Tankfest, you can blame Jeremy. Well, I was intending to go to Tankfest and the Dayton Air Show this year, but for some reason the Dayton Air Show was moved forward a week, so it coincided with the same weekend as Tankfest, so I had to make a choice between the two. Never been to the Dayton Air Show before. I went to Tankfest last year. I've been to Bovington 3 times now, so yeah, Tankfest lost out. Definitely going to go to Tankfest next year though. But Jeremy, those of you who watch the live streams on Thursdays with Quickie Baby and Monday with Circumflexes will know Jeremy as Ray Lynn. He's a chat moderator, I think in both of their channels. He's constantly donating gifts to, so that Circon or Quickie Baby can give away on the live streams. He's just a really, really generous guy. I've gotten to know him quite well over the last year. And he is the guy who organised the whole trip for me, the itinerary. He booked the accommodation at the Dayton Air Show, the hotels, everything. He just made it. I literally just had to turn up and be driven around the place. So big shout out, big thank you to Jeremy for organising the whole American trip. Secondly, Dale, Kyle, Adam, these guys went above and beyond the call of duty. If you watched any of the Gnome vs. Food videos, Dale, Kyle and Adam were the guys sitting on the left-hand side of the table who met me at Schmidt's sausage house in the German village in Columbus. As well as going for lunch with these guys at Schmidt's and at the Ohio Deli, they very, very generously took me shooting on the Sunday, the second last day of the visit, a place called the Bullet Ranch in Columbus. They brought all of their own weapons along, let me play with them, used all of their ammunition. They even made up special targets for the shooting range with pictures of various different artillery pieces on them. They're all World of Tanks players. So, thank you very, very much to those three guys as well, Dale, Kyle and Adam, for their generosity. Another guy that I need to give a shout out to is, what was his name? Ed Dyer. There we go. Nearly forgot. Sorry, Ed. Ed, I met you at amongst the 50 or so people that came out of the crowd and said hello to me at the Dayton Air Show itself. Ed is in the US Army Reserve. He was manning the US Army Reserve stand at the Dayton Air Show in uniform. He's a published author. He writes books on military aircraft. And he gave me a whole bunch of autographed of the books that he's had published. So, and this is just a tiny example of the kind of generosity that I experienced when I went to America. And, doubtless there are going to be people who are saying, well, Jingles, of course everybody was very happy and pleased to see you. These were people who had gone to the Dayton Air Show and the US Air Force Museum just to meet you. They're your subscribers. Of course they're going to be happy and generous to meet you. But, yeah, I've been to America twice before. When I retired from the Navy, I went to New York, as I said, and prior to that, when I was still in the Navy, I went to Baton Rouge and New Orleans in Louisiana, and it was exactly the same there. And I really cannot recommend travel enough. They say travel broadens your horizons, and it does, but it also, when I came back and I posted up some of the early videos on my visit to America, the usual, you put anything to do with America up on YouTube, and the comment section always just turns into this big fight between the anti-Americans and the pro-Americans. And I maintain to this day, it's very, very easy to hate people if you've never met them. We'll stick with America for the moment as the main example, but this applies to every nationality in the world. Canadians, Indians, Germans, Italians, French, Angolans, whatever, you name it. It's very, very easy to hate people if you've never actually met any of them, particularly if your only experience, indirect experience of America is watching American TV programs, watching American movies, and what you've seen on the news, and your only direct experience of Americans is listening to idiots argue in the comments section of YouTube videos. This is not representative of the hundreds of millions of American people that you don't see on TV or at the movies or on the news or making idiots out of themselves in the comments section of YouTube videos. You really need to get out there and meet people before you can form an opinion of them. And I have met a lot of Americans, both in America and here in the UK. And again, I'll tell you what, I've never met one that I didn't like. I've met thousands of Englishmen that I didn't like, but I've never met one American that I didn't like. And the same goes for the Poles and the Romanians and the French and the Germans and the Italians and the Canadians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, you name it. It really is amazing that I have met countless people from my own country that I thought were complete arseholes, but I have never yet met a foreign person that I didn't immediately like. I've certainly read about foreigners that seem like, complete arseholes. I've seen stories on the news about foreigners who seem like complete arseholes, but I've never actually met one. It's really funny how all of these nationalities that the news and the movies and television tells you that you should be hating, turn out to be really, really nice people when you actually meet them in person. And you don't even have to travel to meet these people, particularly in Britain. The Poles and the Romanians get a lot of shit in the press. The Daily Mail, one of our least reputable newspapers, has a real hard-on for the Romanians for some bizarre reason. No idea why. And it's always the same old story. They come over here, they take our jobs. As I understand it, the French have got a similar sort of attitude towards the Algerians, for example. In certain parts of America, they've got this attitude with the Mexicans. But the funny old thing, and it's the same all over, is that if the British were prepared to take hard, low-paid jobs like driving taxis, driving buses, working in McDonald's and Subway, there wouldn't be a market available for people from Eastern Europe to come over and take these jobs. It's because the British are too lazy to take these kind of jobs. You know, they're hard-working jobs that the Poles and the Romanians are here in Britain in such large numbers. And you know what? I've met a lot of Poles and Romanians driving taxis, driving buses, working in Subway here in Britain, and they're all fantastic people. Actually, here's a funny one. You go to any pub in London, there'll be at least one Australian working behind the bar. Nobody ever says, bloody Australians coming over here, taking all our bar jobs. Why is that? I don't know. But joking aside, the point I'm making here is, and this is the kind of point that I bang on about in just about, well, most episodes of Mingles with Jingles. It's draw your own conclusions based on your own personal experience. I've been using America as the example because, as is always the case, whenever not just my videos, as anybody puts a video up on YouTube featuring America, and the 2/3 of the comment section is just a flame war between the anti-Americans and the pro-Americans. Draw your own conclusions. If you've never met any Americans, you've got no right to shoot your mouth off about what Americans are like. If your only contact with real Americans is arguing with idiots in the comment section of YouTube videos, then you do not know what you are talking about. And if you ever stop and ask these people, well, why is it that you hate Americans so much? It usually boils down to one or two things. And the big reason is, well, America's the big guy on the block. At the moment, they took over from the British Empire. Everybody used to hate us. But, the empire's gone, and now they just hate us because our food is shit. It's America's the big kid in the playground, so everybody hates America and talks about them behind their back. That's one of the reasons. And it's childish, but it's a common reason. The other reason, if you actually press people and say, why do you hate Americans? They'll say, oh, it's because of American foreign policy. It's what they're doing in Iraq, what they're doing in Afghanistan, or it's because of American trade and economic policy and trade tariffs here and protectionism and this and that and the other, Yeah, but that's not the American people. There are hundreds of millions of Americans who also disagree with American foreign policy or trade policy or economic policy. It's the American government. So already you've got so much in common with all of these Americans that you claim you hate. And it all boils down to a lack of exposure or a lack of direct experience of the kind of cultures that you're talking about hating. If your only experience of Americans and American culture is watching Michael fucking Bay movies, then you really don't know anything about America. And you could say the same thing about, well, if your only experience of France is watching Luc Besson movies, then you don't know anything about the French either. And, you could say the same thing about, I'm trying to think of an Italian movie director and I'm failing. Sergio Leone. Although he mostly made westerns, so it doesn't... Oh, it's a terrible example. Don't worry, we'll edit this out later. He said, and then left it in. But you get what I'm going at here. You need to travel. You need to meet people before you can actually put your hand on your heart and say, yep, I don't like them. If you haven't, then you've got no right to shoot your mouth off about it. I have travelled. I have met people from all kinds of different nations. I spent 22 years in the Navy. And 2/3 of that time was travelling around the world. I've met people from everywhere, and I liked them all. The Israelis, the Italians, the Americans, the French. The French, Britain's traditional enemy. I have never met a Frenchman that I didn't like. I know I'm going to hell for saying that as an Englishman. But it's true. You really need to get out there and meet people before you have any right to form an opinion on what they're like. I mean, I can't believe that this actually needs spelling out. It just seems so obvious to me. Maybe it's because I have travelled so extensively. But it's 100% true. You can't just go around making your opinions on entire cultures and nationalities based on what you've seen on TV. You need to meet people. And I think you will be genuinely surprised and pleased by the results. I certainly have been. And it's the main reason why I love doing what I do, going out to events like Tankfest and the Dayton Air Show and meeting people in the hundreds, because I love meeting new people. I don't care where you're from. It is the best part of doing what I do. And as I said right at the beginning, I genuinely hope I never ever become so popular that meeting you guys out and around the world, wherever I might come across you, becomes a pain in the arse, because at that point, well, let's just hope it never comes to that, because meeting new people is the single best part of doing what I do. Actually, while we're on this subject, I have a perfect example of the sort of thing I'm talking about. Shortly before I flew to America last week, I got a PM on YouTube from a guy called John Willis in Florida. And he said, "Jingles, long-time fan and subscriber. Next time you're in the USA and anywhere near Florida, send me a message and I'll see if I can set you up with an alligator hunt with a crossbow at night. I know a guy." How amazing is that? It's batshit crazy. But do you have any idea how fantastic it is to have the kind of job, doing all this stuff, where I get this kind of message, and it's not unusual? Hunting alligators at night with crossbows. Jesus. I've got to go to Florida now. The best part is, right now, there's a couple of 100,000 people in Florida watching this video going, "Yeah, what's so funny about that?" That might be perfectly normal in Florida, but the biggest reptile we have in Britain is a grass snake, so that's like 12 inches long. And this is why it's so fantastic doing what I do, getting these kind of messages. It certainly is probably the most bizarre one I have had, but it's not unusual to get this kind of message when you're me. Sometimes I love my job, I really, really do. Well, anyway, that's enough about Johnny Foreigner. Let's get on with the rest of Mingles with Jingles. Elite Dangerous is now in Premium Beta 2. It, of course, went into the second phase of the Premium Beta test the day I flew to America. You couldn't make this up. So I've been kind of late seeing what's new with Elite Dangerous, but that right there, that's the new Orbis space station. It's way bigger than the Coriolis stations that you've seen in my previous Elite Dangerous videos. They've added new star systems, new stuff to poke around and explore in before the game goes into the Gamma test, which is going to be an even bigger version of the closed beta, and then into open beta test. And release. But that is just really, really pretty. The next thing I wanted to talk about in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles is something that I wasn't entirely sure whether or not this was the appropriate place to bring it up, but people have written into me, people write into me all the time, telling me about some of the real life problems that they have. In one particular occasion, it was a small kid getting bullied at school, really, really badly, and the amount of advice and support that you guys poured out to this poor kid in the comment section of the particular Mingles with Jingles video where I raised the subject was really, really heartwarming. And I don't want to make a habit out of doing this sort of thing because you don't come here to hear about people's real life problems. However, in this case, I'm prepared to make another exception. Lieutenant Joker, one of my longest subscribers, and also one of the guys on YouTube that I have been subscribed to for years and years and years. You may recall seeing him in the comment section of various different videos. He calls himself Lieutenant Joker because he was a lieutenant in the German army. Now he runs a YouTube channel. He also plays World of Tanks, or he used to, and that's where the problem arises. He's had to shut down the YouTube channel because he's now suffering from a problem that is very, very common amongst ex-servicemen. The overwhelming majority of people that you see living rough on the streets in your cities tend to come from military backgrounds. Joker is in severe danger of becoming one of these people. He left the German military because of health reasons, and his insurance company is now giving him the runaround. The situation's gotten so bad He's now basically homeless. At the moment he's living in a hotel, but as soon as the money runs out, he's going to be sleeping rough. What's happening is he's basically fallen between the cracks in the government bureaucratic machine. His insurance company had been dragging their heels, so he couldn't afford to pay his rent. Because he doesn't have a permanent address, he can't claim social security payments. Because he's not able to claim social security payments, he can't get a permanent address. It's a big catch-22 situation. And it's as easy as this, and it's particularly ex-service people that end up in this sort of situation. Ex-service people who have been discharged from the military for medical reasons that run into trouble with the insurance companies, and they end up homeless. Okay, sad story. What could we do to help? Well, to be completely honest, most of you are not going to be able to help him. Certainly not directly. The most important thing is that we keep him off the streets. Right? He needs a permanent place to live. Now, while somebody offering him temporary accommodation would be great in the short term, it really doesn't fix his problems. What he needs is a job. He needs a regular source of income. With a regular source of income, he can afford to pay rent, get a permanent address, so that he can continue his correspondence with his insurance company, and then eventually get the medical treatment that he needs to fix his eyesight so that he can actually get a proper job somewhere and live a normal life like a normal person. So, if there's anybody out there who could employ, or who knows somebody who could employ, an ex-German Army junior officer with training in leadership, project management and adult education in or near the town of Minden in the Nordrhein-Westfalen area of Germany, please get in touch with him. I've put his contact details in the video description. If you'd like to offer him messages of support, then please do that in the comments section of this video rather than emailing him directly. Let's try not to spam his email inbox, which he can only access via his mobile phone at the moment, with anything that isn't a direct offer of help. So hopefully somebody out there can make use of his talents, and we can do our part to keep another ex-serviceman off the streets. And, you know, I don't want everybody to feel guilty that they're not actually in a position to help him. I mean, this is a real problem, and the amount of people watching this video who are actually going to be in a position to do anything to help him is going to be vanishingly small. But you never know your luck. If you don't ask, you don't get. So, anyway, on with the rest of Mingles with Jingles. I am actually planning on answering some questions this week. Yeah, that'll be a first. What do we got? Let's have a look. Oh, World of Tanks question. Nice simple question from Sierra Extinction, and he wants to know, is it worth buying camo for heavy tanks? Simple question, you're going to get a simple answer. Of course not, you must be new here. Okay, well, to answer your question in game mechanic terms, what happens when you apply camouflage to a tank in World of Tanks is it gets a 5% camo bonus. But that's a 5% bonus to your existing camouflage rating. You know, 5% of nothing is still nothing. So heavy tanks tend to have the poorest camo ratings of any vehicle class in the game. And so putting camo on a heavy tank is not really that effective. Although you could certainly make a case. I mean, if you were to set things up in the training room conditions, on Malinovka, for example, with two heavy tanks at one end of the field and a Hellcat at the other end of the field. Both heavy tanks are at exactly the same distance from the Hellcat. One of them has camo, the other one doesn't. Then, yes, the Hellcat is going to spot the heavy tank without the camouflage before it spots the heavy tank with the camouflage, and he's going to get shot at first. But we're talking, you know, laboratory conditions here. Now, I'm not saying putting camo on your heavy tank is not going to save your ass. I have seen examples where I've been in a platoon with Quickie Baby and Ike, for example. In fact, I think it was on this map, where Quickie Baby and Ike were both in exactly the same tank. Quickie Baby had camo on his tank, Ike didn't have camo on his tank, and an invisible tank destroyer started shooting at Ike while Quickie Baby was right next to him. And Quickie Baby's sixth sense had not gone off. Quickie Baby had not been spotted. He was right at the edge of whatever tank destroyer it was, right at the edge of his view range. He could only see Ike, he couldn't see Quickie Baby. So, yes, it can happen, it can work, it can be valuable, but there are far better things in World of Tanks for you to spend your gold on than putting camo on heavy tanks. You get much more benefit from something that already has a decent existing base camo rating. Light tanks in particular. Putting camouflage on a light tank is a great idea, because light tanks keep their camo bonus while they're moving. There are lots of very, very sneaky tank destroyers, for example, like the Rheinmetall Borsig or the Stug 3, that also have good camo ratings and really, really benefit from a camo net and camouflage actually painted on the tank as well. Heavy tanks, not so much. Although having said that, I mean, I tend to have camo on my heavy tanks as well. Not because I'm expecting it to win games for me, but because I have far too much gold and I think it looks nice. So this is the part of the video where I basically turn into your dad and tell you to do as I say and not as I do. Unless, of course, you know, you've got plenty of gold and nothing better to spend it on. But there are far better things for you to use your gold than putting camouflage and pretty paint schemes on heavy tanks, because they really don't get much benefit out of it. Next up, Tree Slayer's got a good question. He wants to know, if you could only keep one game that you own and all of your other games would be destroyed, which game would you save? Oh, that's a tough one. You know, it would probably be World of Tanks. I mean, I have this love-hate relationship with World Tanks. I don't think I have played another game that pisses me off so much, but at the same time is a source of so much joy and entertainment. And it would have to be a multiplayer game, because the single-player games, I mean, I've had some great single-player games in the past. Baldur's Gate, the Mass Effect series, but there's a limit to how many times you can play a single-player game and still find it enjoyable. Multiplayer games, you know, every match you play has the potential to be different. And you'll note my very, very careful choice of words here. The next game that we play has the potential to be different. Yeah, it's probably going to be the same stupid shit that you put up with every time you click the battle button. Heavy tanks camping at the back of the map, shouldering the tank destroyers out of the way so that they can camp the bushes. You know what it's like. You play random battles in World of Tanks as much as I have, or most of you have. But the potential is there for the next time you hit that random battle button to end up with the kind of match that is the stuff of legends. The kind of match that you spent hours boring your friends to death in the pub, giving them a play-by-play rundown of every moment of the battle because it was epic. And that's why we keep playing, because the next game that we play has the potential to be that game. It usually isn't, of course. It's usually terrible. But we live in hope. You know, we World of Tankers, we're an optimistic bunch. Oh, God. Oh, World of Tanks, I love you and yet I hate you at the same time. Actually, you know, while we're on this subject, I got a message the other day from Dale, one of the guys that I met over in the USA. He's just started up a European account, and he had this to say. He's by no means a World of Tanks champion, but in the 2 days that he's had a European account, he has been completely stunned by the complete morons who play this game. In his first game, one of the people on his team didn't understand how to tell the difference between enemy and friendly tanks. Shot half his own team. And it's fun, you know, I laughed so much when I got this email from him. But I have had exactly the same experience playing on the North American server. It's funny how much things change. They just stay the same. Anyway, that is it for this week's Mingles with Jingles. I hope you have enjoyed this week's episode. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.